I'm Katie Greifeld in New York. Welcome to Bloomberg Markets. You take a look at markets at this moment. Another quiet day. Of course, the S&P 500 currently higher to the tune of about 0.1% or so. We are hovering near all-time highs, but it's gotten very quiet at the benchmark level. Of course, at the single stock level, things are much more exciting, which we'll get to in just a couple of minutes. But you take a look at the NASDAQ 100, a little bit more signs of life when it comes to your big tech stocks. The NASDAQ 100 currently higher by about 0.3%. All the while, you have that bond market rally continuing to build. The 10-year Treasury yield currently lower by about 5 basis points right now. Of course, could all change again tomorrow when we get those PCE numbers. But for right now, one stock that we're watching is Walgreens. It's hitting its lowest level since 1997 after cutting its profit forecast for the full year. And I'm pleased to say that joining us now with more is Bloomberg's Fiona Rutherford. And this is the second time in a row that they've cut that outlook, Fiona. Well, it's one of the year's highest profile IPOs so far. The online comics platform Webtoon debuting on the NASDAQ today, and shares are indicated to open at $23.25. That is above the IPO price of $21 per share. Let's talk about this more with David Lee. He is Webtoon COO and CFO. And David, we're going to get into the fundamentals of the business, but let's first talk about this IPO, raising $315 million. What will you use the money for?
Well, already today we see
recent IPOs because we haven't seen a lot of them. There's been a real dearth of IPOs, and I'm wondering why now for this U.S. listing?
Well, our global flywheel took
Japanese in origin have become popular and are high engagement in the U.S., but what specifically are we talking about when we talk about Webtoons?
Well, 75% of our consumer
creators, because that's something I've been wondering about. When it comes to the content and when it comes to the content creators on your platform, how do you keep them there?
We have a very unique
that they actually get some compensation in some form as well. And I'm curious what the pitch to institutional investors is. If you take a look at your filings with the SEC, it's interesting. You have BlackRock, for example, purchasing up to $50 million worth of shares. But when it comes to investors outside of BlackRock, how do you explain this to them? I want to talk a little bit about the path of profitability, because you had a net loss of $145 million last year on revenue of about $1.3 billion. When will you be profitable?
Well, if you look at our last quarter,
on that listing, hope to speak to you again soon. That, of course, is David Lee of Webtoon. Let's get a check on these markets about an hour into the U.S. trading day. We'll do that in those shares. Really tough crowd out there. Bloomberg's Abigail Doolittle, thank you so much. Now, coming up, France and the UK are gearing up for pivotal elections. Well, it's time now for our Wall Street Week conversation. And earlier this month, Claudia Sheinbaum achieved a decisive victory in the Mexican presidential election. And joining us now to assess her policy agenda is Joe Sitt. He is Thor Equity's founder and chairman, and of course, Wall Street Week's David Weston. And it really feels like markets, of course, are still digesting those election results.
Yeah, exactly. Not quite sure what to make of it. We'll find out. So, Joe, we're really good to have you. If you look at that, the peso's not doing so well.
I think that right now.
And so, of course, those are the risks, and you can see that translated into the currency market. But as an investor in Mexico, of course, what do you see as the opportunities when you do think about her policy priorities?
Is a fellow named Garcia Harfuch. He was her head of security when she was the main positives. Probably the big unknown, I know he was saying it as I was walking in and I didn't get to give him my answer, was...
Well, before we get to Europe, and I'm glad, of course, you made the point that whether it's Trump or Biden in November, that you feel pretty positive on both outcomes here. But talk to us about commercial real estate when it comes to the Mexican market, because you think about commercial real estate in the U.S. and people are still waiting for another shoe to drop. But what's the landscape look like in Mexico?
With that massive demand for industrial sites, industrial production, shift other side, business to consumer, where we're extremely active. We're probably the most active luxury hotel developer in Latin America, specifically.
Hope to have you back soon so we can talk about France and what's going on over in Europe. That, of course, is Joe Sitt. He is Thor Equity's founder and chairman. And David, who else do we have coming up?
So tomorrow we're going to keep it international. Actually, we're going to China. We're going to have Mary Lovely of the Peterson Institute, because we have that
to Bloomberg's David Weston. This is Bloomberg.